I think that the tank feeling bad problem, in my humble opinion, as a tank player, is very overblown. I'm not kidding. I have a lot of fun on tank still. I like tank in 5v5. I will say those things with my chest. Is Overwatch 2 Season 11 doomed to fail? One of my friends in my Discord seemed to think that might be the case, and I end up going on a very long-winded discussion about all the points that he makes. Now, this originally was supposed to be in a hot takes video, but since I go on for so long talking about this in such detail, I decided it was its own topic of importance. So that's why you're seeing this video as its own standalone thing. If you like this, please check out any of those other hot takes videos on my channel, and make sure to give me a subscribe. I really do appreciate it. Anyways, let's get on to this pretty long discussion. The problems with Overwatch 2 / why Season 11 is doomed to fail. This is a long one. Let's go ahead. I'm going to break this one piece by piece just because it is so long. I don't want to just sit here reading a paragraph. Hydrate or dihydrate. Okay. I want to preface this take with saying I understand the OW team has been put in a rough spot with the layoffs and state of the industry. However, I still believe these problems are capable of being addressed and the game is savable. That is true. It's just going to come with more time. It is not going to just fix itself right away. These things that we want to fix are going to take more and more time because they do not have the resources. So, just off the bat, if this is about Season 11, it's probably too late. If they don't have something cooking for later, they probably don't have the time to turn it around. And I've talked about this a lot before, but they like to do bigger drops at a time. Think back to Ilyari's launch, where it was a lot of things. Ilyari launched. I think Hero Mastery launched. PvE missions launched. Flashpoint launched, right? A lot of stuff right away. And the seasons around it were all kind of limited because it's more hype and more big for the game to have bigger bi-yearly big things, right? So Season 11, as we know, as we have seen, is not one of the more interesting seasons because they are saving this for larger projects later. I would bet that the season that Space Ranger comes out is going to be a big one. Season 12 sounds like it's going to be a pretty big one for maps in particular, because I think that is when Clash is coming out. So I want to preface that with Season 11 is poised, and this is the plan of it not being a banger season, right? So they are not going to have all the really big draws to Overwatch as other seasons. I think that should be made clear. Oh wait, Space Ranger comes out next season. So yes, Season 12 is going to be a very big season, right? Okay. The biggest problem with Overwatch 2 right now is that the devs refuse to admit when they have been wrong on a choice / direction or take way too long to fix it. Is that true? I think this is over-exaggerative. I think there are things that do take time and are hard to fix, and in fact there may not be clear answers that they're going through, and there are things that are quick, like balance, that they have shown us that they are quick to make hot fixes and patches, especially last season. Now maybe it didn't come as quick, or 2 seasons ago, I can't remember when the Malga hot fixes, maybe this is a while back, but basically they have shown us multiple times recently that they are capable of making changes. Remember when the Sig hotfix happened, right? When his ult was, and Roadhog got nerfed and they put his ult back to what it used to be. So they are making the choices. Now, I think the real question is, are they the right choices? Are they enough, right? I think the Roadhog nerfs were not really enough to go through it, right? But I can understand that they want to be a little conservative with how drastically they change the game that quickly, right? That's kind of the trade-off, is that when you take a long time and really test things out and work with them over time, then you have a better understanding of what it's going to be like when it goes live. But when you make a balance change in a week, you don't want to make really big shifts without thinking about them, right? Also, you push them out too early, it may break the game. Plenty of bugs have popped up during balance patches for whatever reason. So that's the trade-off between the speed and stuff. In terms of saying like the devs refuse to admit when they're wrong, I think it's hard to expect them to always communicate that verbally, like in words, that they have made a mistake, because this is a lot of their marketing material. You know, Blizzard themselves may not want Team 4 to be like, you messed up. And I also think that a lot of Team 4 are very proud of their work, and they don't think that these are giant mistakes. And I would kind of agree with them in a lot of regards, right? Like, they don't have that kind of, like, the rabid fan mentality of general Overwatch community. So you kind of have to think about that when it comes to acknowledging flaws with the game. Like, these are human beings who do a lot of work, and again, the culture at Blizzard and the gaming industry is not great right now, and I think the last thing they really want to do is just kind of admit to themselves that they've made a bunch of mistakes. I really don't want to go into this too much because I don't know. None of us know. And I feel like this is not something that I think it is hard for us to really make good comments on, if that makes sense. So, next paragraph. Going in Overwatch 2, we were promised more communication and direct conversations with members of our community. This promise has only been partially fulfilled. We have an occasional Reddit Q&A or an interview with a content creator, but these are far and few between, and often don't even mention the most pressing issues the game have. I think that they have given us a lot of consistent communication. I think it's kind of ridiculous to expect them to always be communicating with us with, like, on a weekly basis or something like that. We got a Reddit AMA like 3 weeks ago maybe, and like tomorrow we're getting an interview with Alec Dawson from Spylo. So I think that's good, right? Like, once a month, a good nice amount of talking to the developers, having them say stuff. They've had developer updates. You know, there was the one with the safety features. Like, they want to talk to us. They want us to be involved. We trialed Venture. We trialed Clash, right? That's part of the creative process. And to me, that's part of communication because it's us communicating with them. You always have to remember that we are always communicating with them too. And I feel like every month when they do one of these things, it is them acknowledging that they are listening to us, that they hear us in some regards, right? And I think a lot of this comes down to they don't mention the most pressing issues because, in my opinion, from what I've seen across the Overwatch community, a lot of the talk around these pressing issues is incredibly rude towards the developers. It's very hostile, right? It's you go on like some of those AMA forums and you'll see so many questions of people being like, when are you gonna fix your shitty fucking game? I gotta bleep that. I forgot I'm going on YouTube. Stuff like that, right? And I think that they're not gonna respond to that, right? They want to respond to intellectual comments, right? Things that are actually looking for real responses from human beings. And lots of the big pressing issues are the ones that people get the most flamed about, and it's really hard to talk about those with that kind of mindset. And also, there are definitely things that again, I can't speak for the developers, but I don't think they think 5v5, for example, I don't think they think it is a problem per se, right? That is a community perceived problem. But what the developers perceive as a problem is much different than what the community does. So when the developers talk to us about these things, that maybe maybe we think that they are not touching the pressing matters, but I think the things that they talk to us about are the ones that they do acknowledge are issues. 2, they are ready to talk about, right? They don't want to just talk randomly. Let's say, hypothetically, they were working on bringing 6v6 back, okay? That is not something that they are just going to be like a week after they started that project, just being like, yeah, we're going to do that. And just like, that's kind of it, right? They would want to make sure everything's in order. Plans don't change, right? There is an expectation when you talk to the community that what you say is going to happen, right? Have you seen all of those like old game trailers where like a game shifts a lot during development and people get mad about those early reactions because that's not what the game is promised, and people kind of like they shout false advertising and everything like that, even though that's not even what false advertising is. But it's kind of like that, right? When you talk about it, you are making a promise, even if that's not what it is the intention, right? It will be perceived as a promise that this is happening, that something is going to happen, right? That's the problem. That's why they don't speak about a lot of stuff, because it will be taken as such. So, okay, next paragraph. The most recent developer update and Season 11 trailer primarily featured three things: cosmetics, the new map, and tweaks to matchmaking. None of these things are focused on the actual in-game experience, and why so many players find it harder and harder for them to return to this game. Who cares about matchmaking if the actual game people are being matched up for doesn't feel fun or rewarding to play? Who cares about new skins when the game you play using them isn't enjoyable? Why are the devs blatantly ignoring the shameful gameplay loop we've been forced to put through? In my hype video for my big new season launching, why would I admit that the game has been shit for months? That does not make any sense. To say, yes, again, this is a filler season. It is mainly cosmetics. It is mainly fun events, but it is not big, substantial stuff. Runasapi is a great addition, like another map, always good. And like the Colosseo rework. But, you know, the big stuff people like that really make the gameplay flow are heroes and big balance changes, right? They just had a really big balance change in Season 10. You cannot expect that to happen anytime soon, right? So it's a little much to expect something like that, I think, you know? But again, it's not like they aren't acknowledging changes that they're trying to make to the gameplay loop. What are individual hero balance changes if not that, right? Hog is meta. They're not going to say like, oh, we think this is really bad that Hog is meta. They're just going to put in the patch notes that they nerfed him. And they even did say that Hog was such a problem earlier that they were like, we have a hotfix for Hog coming. But they're not going to say in their video, we know you guys think this meta has been awful and the game is unfun to play and nothing is good. Like, it's just, it doesn't make sense, right? They're not ignoring the shameful gameplay loop or whatever that is, but they are being a little more reasonable about it, right? And again, like I said earlier, if they were to acknowledge, like if they think that there is a terrible gameplay loop right now, they would not just go out and say it. Like, if there is not a concrete plan to fix it because it might take a long time to do, they're not just going to go out and say it. So, that is why. I mean, I think in the trailers and the developer update, that's not, maybe in the developer update, but definitely not in the trailer, that's not the time and place. That is not where you talk about that kind of stuff, right? So, that's kind of that, right? I guess, like, who cares about matchmaking the actual game? Also, this is some of that stuff where it's like, you know, they're not allowed to make positive changes or attempt to make positive changes or new additions without looking at the big stuff. And it's like, again, adding in the skins that they've been working on for months is always going to happen. It's really easy, you know, just because of like how the pipelines work. And making changes to competitive matchmaking is always a good thing, and it's ready to go. So why wouldn't they put it in there, right? I understand, like, the frustration about the gameplay loop or whatever you may personally feel about it, but that is not something to expect them to talk about all the time. In fact, I don't think it's something that you should expect them to agree with you on, that the gameplay loop is off. It is a shameful gameplay loop. Why would they say that? Why would they even think that? If they thought that, I think you would be seeing a lot more aggressive changes. and a lot more like I feel like you would see them now, and of course there's going to be all the thing like, well, if they don't see it's a problem, that's really bad for the dev team, and I'm not going to go into all of that, but I think that this is putting so much pressure on one individual season that I think, as we as a community should know, was never going to be one of the bigger ones anyways. And I think it's just exacerbated by the problem that Season 10 was underwhelming even though it had a character launch. Now we're going into Season 11, which was going to be one of those lesser seasons, and everyone's like, what's going on? What's happening? Also, part of the problem is just like the live service never-ending sludge of content, expecting things to change as quick as possible, adding so many things all the time. The game is ever evolving. That's a different conversation. I'm not going to go into all of that, but I think that again leads into that kind of thinking. All right, tank doesn't feel fun because despite becoming stronger as a role in recent updates, the goal of tank in the current meta is to make the other tank not have a good time or able to play the game. Hence why the strongest tanks recently have been Mauga, Orisa, and Roadhog. I don't think that is the intended role of the tank. I think that Mauga and Roadhog's designs are very anti-tank, and so when they are good, it is hard to play tank, right? Like, the tank buster tank archetype is really bad. Ori, I don't think, is a tank buster, and honestly, I don't even find her to be much of a tank counter in most cases. I think she is just uninteractable by all parties. Maybe tanks feel it the worst, but that's just Ori, right? That's a different problem. But yeah, there's also like saying that tanks have a goal in a meta, like a ladder meta, not like a competitive like team meta, but like saying that tanks have a goal in a meta, it's not quite how metas work. The goal for tanks is what the developers want, or like, what the fantasy is, right? The reality really is that in this meta, it is much more effective to bully the other tank onto characters that are effective at it, right? Now, I would like to say that I think that the tank feeling bad problem, in my humble opinion, as a tank player, is very overblown. And I'm not kidding. I play tank. I have a lot of fun on tank still. I like tank in 5v5. I will say those things with my chest. Why it feels bad is that I think a lot of people are not prepared. I think the fun of tank, rather, is that you have to manage a lot of different things coming your way. You have to be the one to take the brunt of the force. You need to know when to go in. It's a lot on you. That's the fun. The decision making, the timing, all of that. Like, all of that is what makes tank fun and challenging. Tank is the hardest role, in my opinion, but it's because of all those things. It's about navigating all of this other stuff, right? Like, navigating all this stuff so that you can make an impact and help your team. Enable your team, even, right? That's the fun in tank. And I'll agree that it has gone a little too far in, like, there's a lot of stuff that makes tanks' lives miserable. There's so many things to get around that you have to be so much better to navigate the easier options that the other roles are throwing at you. That's why tank is frustrating, right? I think there just is a skill differential between the roles among, like, you know what I mean? That you need to have, honestly, like, it feels like you need to be playing a lot better on tank than, or be thinking a lot more stuff than like a support or a DPS, because there's so many more factors you have to consider because they are going to come your way. That's the psychology of tank. It's just how it's kind of always going to be. To me, inherently, that is not a problem. That is the fun. It's overblown right now. And again, the tank buster tanks that make, Again, those are the easier heroes that make your life miserable, that you have to outplay much more, if you even can outplay them on certain hero kits, that it is not worth it to play anything else, right? It's the meta, most efficient tactic available. Is Winston into Mauga, Bastion, that kind of stuff in ladder, solo queue, is that the most efficient tactic available than just playing Sigma? No, it isn't, right? That's why the meta feels bad. I think, again, that tanks have a lot of counterplay and skill, particularly some of like the, like Winston and Doomfist and Sigma and Junker Queen. But again, it's like those characters that are really exacerbating the problem, right? It's too many factors at once that make it too difficult, right? But again, I do think it is like not as, I think it is again overblown. Like this is what the tank is doing. That is the appeal of the role. All right, DPS is the role that can have the most fun in the current meta, but that's only if you pick 2 to 4 meta heroes. I mean, like, I don't think that's always true in ladder. I think you can get away with a lot of stuff on ladder. Is it easier to pick Sojourn, Cassidy, Tracer? I actually don't know if Cassidy is good like right now, or Sojourn like new patch, but like, is it really? Who knows, right? But also, again, this meta in particular, are we really complaining about playing Tracer? About playing Sojourn? I know people complain about Sojourn because she's good, but like playing Sojourn, that's fun. It's not like tank, where like playing Mauga is sleeper mode. Playing Ori is sleeper mode, right? Playing Tracer and Sojourn and Venture, Pharah's pretty fun now, I think there's a good mix of DPS characters that have been good right now. And they're fun. It's no Reapers, no Symmetras, no Junkrats. I don't know why there would be Junkrat, but you get the idea, right? There's a lot more of the better DPS in the meta right now. It again, like, is it not like, it's not great to always have a meta where it's just like the same couple characters over and over again forever. I mean, eventually we're going to want some variety, but I'd rather it be these characters than some other characters, right? Support isn't fun because the most value you get on support is pumping resources into the tank. There's not much value in a DPS hybrid playstyle as there once was. I don't think that's entirely true. I think keeping an eye on your tank is more needed now, because tanks do require more resources, just after Season 9. Although maybe it's a little better now after the Season 10 changes with the sustainability. Like the damage reduction, all that jazz, right? But I think the support, I mean, like, we play Kiri and Ana. Ana's been finding her way into the meta. And Bap, all of these characters, and Lucio, of course, are all very offensive, right? I say offensive, they have damage pressure, right? I don't think Bap is the most offensive character in the game. But they all have their place in damage and all of that, like, the extra fun stuff with support. So to say that it's just pumping resources into the tank all the time, I don't think that's true, especially in this meta when you play like Mauga, Ana, Lucio, that Ana in that comp is like just going for the most aggressive like nades ever, and kind of doesn't care if she trades her life for it, if she finds a bigger value nade than her staying in the fight in like basically means, right? So in that case, I do not think it's just pumping resources into the tank. In fact, I think it's quite the opposite, where you need to be there ready to dive and just kind of be keeping an eye. I mean, these tanks that you're playing are Mauga, Roadhog, Ori. They require resources, yes, but, Ori not anymore, but like, Ori has lots of sustain. Mauga has lots of sustain. Hog has lots of sustain, right? The you're really just there to keep an eye on them to make sure they don't get like a really bad Suzu or anti-nade, right? Like you're keeping a watchful eye while you're doing the things you guys are doing, right? That's what I think support plays like right now. So the DPS hybrid style, I think, is still here, right? All right. Not to mention, in the Season 11 patch, they're already starting the doomed to fail balance cycle of Overwatch 2 by micro-buffing Orisa and not touching Mauga at all. Just cycling which of the 3 strongest tanks in the last 3 seasons gets to be a top pick by nerfing Roadhog. Okay, the Orisa one is not... Just taking a second back on her weakest cooldown is not anything, right? They didn't touch the things that actually make her good. I know it's micro-buffing, I get it. But Ori is actually... Can I say it? Poo-poo dog ass right now. Unplayable garbage. So, like, yeah, they don't really want any character, like Ori is, like, really bad right now. And they don't want to make her good. That's why they're giving her buffs in areas that aren't her strong suit. Not touching Mauga, I think, was a little confusing to me. But Mauga is one of those characters that's really good in higher ranks and team settings, but I think if you make the knobs go too low, that he becomes worthless. Maybe I would prefer that. But I get it. I do get it. On some level. I don't know why there weren't at least a couple of nerfs, like really small ones. And of course, Hog has been hit on the nerf cycle once or twice. I don't think they're enough. But this is not the... They don't want this. I feel like it's really like... Maybe it's a problem with their balance and the changes that they make, but they don't necessarily want only 3 tanks that are perceived to be some of the ones that are not fun to be viable. They're just, again, when they make changes, they're trying to be mindful of not creating, like... Remember when Queen became, like, turbo broken for, like, at the beginning of Season 4? And they had to, like hotfix nerf her? I don't think they really want to do that, because I don't think they want to create a meta that is, what's it called? First off, they don't go into patches trying to create metas, right? That just kind of happens, right? So they have no idea how the meta is going to shake up. I mean, they don't. Nobody really does until you get your hands on with the patch. Obviously, you could talk about some things that would change it up, just in theory, but they don't balance the game around the meta. They want to see it evolve, and they're trying to make changes to just, like, you know, make a lot more of the heroes viable, playable, whatever. And sometimes they just make a bad call, and people just realize that it's like, this thing is still meta, Kiri is still good, Mauga is still good, right? Now, the arguments, of course, like, should you balance for the meta? Should you balance for pro play? Should you balance for the top rank? Should you balance for everybody? That is just an entirely different... That's a big, big can of worms. But, like, I'll admit, like, not all the balance changes hit for me. Mostly, a lot of the time. But I think it's a little disingenuous to say that they're, like, trying to cycle the support, like, the tanks and, like, you know, whatever. The devs aren't listening. They would rather bury their head in the sand and refuse to believe they have made a choice then refuse to believe they made a negative choice that impacts the game experience. Again, this goes in. I don't like it's hostile. This is really hostile, right? I understand you're frustrated, but to me, this is just like they're not burying their heads in the sand, right? They're making changes. They're talking to us. But again, like, I'm not going to go into it again, but just all the stuff I talked about before, about how things take time, and they want to make sure that they're good. And if they talk about things, then those are seen as promises, right? All of that stuff, right? I don't think this is a productive way to look at things, basically. And that's the sad reason why Season 11 is already doomed to fail. Again, I don't think Season 11 is supposed to be one of the good ones, right? It was supposed to be one of the ones that is going to happen before one of the big drops. So nobody will stick around for the new season content or the next crossover event for long if the game experience is still on fun. They're going to come back if... They'll come back on a big drop. They will. They're going to try it out, especially if there's big balance changes. Like, it seems like they're kind of wanting to do more often, more bigger changes, more systematic changes. And I feel like those will be coming with Season 12. There's going to be a whole new game mode. There's going to be a whole new hero. New heroes are really big draws. The people will come back to play a new hero. I think they totally will. I want the game to succeed and be fun because I still believe the game I fell in love with is in there somewhere. It's just not looking good right now. I don't know how to talk about the game, the old game of Overwatch compared to the new game of Overwatch, because it has changed a lot. But there is a large shift in the perception of competitive or just PvP games in general since Overwatch launched, right? Overwatch was one of the last PvP games people played for fun only, right? Overwatch launched near the tail end of the years where multiplayer was fun. Was for fun, is the way I'm putting it. It's the before everything became try hard, esport, everybody wants to be good at everything at all times. Overwatch, which of course was in a just, if we were to play old, like Overwatch 1 as it launched today, we would hate it. Unironically, I am not kidding, we would hate it. I think so. Because the game just was, the philosophy around the game was different. And the game didn't have to be this perfect, balanced thing. It was just this, look at these fun abilities we made, look at these well-written heroes we have, look at these gorgeous maps. It all comes together, they interact with each other, and the game is constantly changing, evolving. There's a lot to get into. There's a lot, if you don't want to get into it, all the random stuff still happens. No game plays the same, right? Nowadays, there's so many more factors to take account of. And the way that people interact with the game is different. Nobody is going to agree on anything anymore. There's every change that they make is always going to be a compromise. I don't think there's really any more like objectively good changes they can make that are going, everybody in the community is going to like kumbaya and say like, it was all good, you did a really good thing. And that's really the struggle, right? It's just that we all have a different perception of what this game should be, because as the years, the game has shifted and the general public understanding of PvP video games has also shifted, right? And this is a game from an older time, from a game that wasn't even supposed to be a PvP game in the first place. The bones of Titan became this thing. And the story of Overwatch is it's inspiring and exciting and really interesting, but it also leads to this weird state that it's in where the game is trying to evolve and keep up with the framework that it has been going on, like this just the bones from years ago. I think of League of Legends, right? League is much older than Overwatch, and that game has shifted so drastically over the years. I don't even played it that much in my entire... I've played Summoner's Rift maybe like 5 times. But that game has shifted so much, right? And now there's a completely new, different understanding of what League should be. And that game, in my opinion, at least from a lot of what my friends have talked about, the ones who've played League for years and years and years, it's just a nightmare to balance, to get right, to make sure everything is good to go. There's too many moving factors, and that's also part of the thing, is that as games get older and expand and keep going, and there's more expectations, it gets harder and harder and harder to balance and keep up and keep things fresh and exciting and new. And at some point, things are going to have to slow down, right? And that is fine. That is natural. And I think that the live service model zombifies video games and just causes this weird interaction with them, where I'm not saying like they're dead and they're still walking. I'm saying that they're just like evolving in a way that they really aren't and were never intended to in the first place. We're using the pieces from stuff from 8 years ago to make a game for the modern era, right? Now, I'm not even saying that the way that we look at things now or later were objectively correct in any way, shape, or form. There was no better option here. I'm just saying it is different. And it is hard. So, saying like the game that I fell in love with is still in there somewhere, I don't think it is. But I also don't think you would love it anymore either if it was. You know what I mean? So, we can still think about the things that we loved about Overwatch 1 and what we reminisce and what we think about, even if it wasn't exactly true, the feeling we got from Overwatch 1 from those other days. But we have to think about how do we implement those in a way that work with our current understanding of the game, of the general gaming sphere. I've gone on this, I feel like I've just gone on this incredibly long rant here, but I hope my point is kind of getting across that this is a much, overall, before I get into the PS, this is a much more complicated topic with moving parts everywhere. And nothing is ever going to be enough to everybody. And that's just what is going to happen. And this is going to happen with every single video game ever made that is like this nowadays. You will see it. You will continue to see it. There will be divides. There will just be, there's about the game, all of that good stuff. I eventually am going to make a topic about games as a service and Overwatch and the difference between product and a piece of art that people have made and the problems of colliding them together. I'll talk about it later in a future video. Look forward to that, I guess. But there's a lot of problems. There's a lot of things. There's so many things. So, anyways, P.S. I do not think going back to 6v6 format would solve all or even most of the game's problems. However, how have we not had that as a quick play hack game mode yet? Probably because the devs wouldn't want to imply the Switch was a poor decision in any way. I think you're kind of right about that. Why would they admit that? In fact, they probably don't think that. I don't think they think that. But if they did think that, why would they, right? This just goes back to all that I already talked about. And that's going to do it for me for this video. Again, if you want to get in on my Discord, send me your own hot takes. That is going to be the link in the description below. If you want to get in on the discussion live, that's twitch.tv/LaneHemingway. Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays is when I'm live. I try to do a discussion every single time I go live to have something to talk to you guys about. And if not, this is YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe, any of that good stuff. It does really help me out at the end of the day. I really appreciate hearing back from you guys specifically. And with all of that, thank you so much for watching. Have a good day.